Hello. A fantastic answer. Well answered. Now, you did, actually. I'm impressed. We're going to move on to Martin. Now, the US of A right now seems to be painting a picture of contradictions. What is previously known as the high altar of capitalism and the successors of it have shown us that even the USA can feel the burn. Even the USA can see the rise of someone overtly and claims to be a democratic socialist being that far away from the highest office of the land. But at the same time, well, shortly after that, we see Trump, who is, for all intents and purposes, capitalism at its worst, who seem to have won on the ticket of, rightly or wrongly, correctly or falsely, representing the working class and the other labels that goes along with his ticket. What is the extent of this contradiction? To what extent is this contradiction a threat to not only is America the high altar of democracy, the high altar of capitalism, but to what extent is it a threat to the high altar of democracy, the high altar of openness that America stands for?
Well, we certainly have in the Trump presidency a presidency that is unprecedented in our country's history. I am not a socialist. I am a Democrat, however, a lifelong Democrat, and I do believe in social justice. And the essence of this Trump candidacy, the appeals, the scapegoating, riding the wave of anger and fear, fanning the flames of a very white, militant nationalism, all these things are deeply concerning to a great majority of Americans. In fact, the majority of Americans voted against him. And you see what I see happening across our country, my country, is this wellspring of activism in opposition to Donald Trump. You saw it on the Women's March that happened the day after the inauguration. You saw it on the day that Donald Trump issued his first Muslim ban, to be followed later after consulting lawyers with a second Muslim ban. But all of these things are repugnant to the notion of the America that all of us, so many of us, hold in our hearts. We are still the country that believes in the four freedoms articulated so strongly by Franklin Roosevelt many years ago. Freedom to worship freely everywhere in the world, freedom from want everywhere in the world, freedom of speech everywhere in the world, and freedom from fear anywhere in the world. Donald Trump did a better job of articulating the promise and was more credible in conveying to a sufficient number of people in the right states, given our electoral college process, the credibility of his promise that he would put the brakes on the decline of your family. That was his promise. After a deep recession, after stagnating wages, with all of the unknowns of globalization and people seeing factories boarded up and closed in their towns and not coming back, he painted a more credible picture of putting the brakes on decline than we were able to paint a story of a more prosperous future with well-being, with the health of all, with the opportunities that come from actually addressing climate change and creating more jobs. You know, we need to do a much better job as progressives and as Democrats of painting a picture, localizing it, and bringing every policy decision back to the family's kitchen table. Our policies became untethered. Thank you. Our policies became untethered, and our messenger became not believable in the torrent of the infotainment that has been made of the media and news in the United States. So how do we get out of this? Some of the most hopeful signs I see are that among young people in the United States of America, there is a pretty wholesale rejection of this sort of scapegoating, belittling of others because of their race or religion. The America that we're moving towards appreciates that our diversity is our strength. And younger Americans are very comfortable with being at once citizens of the United States and children of this one globe. You know, this tiny little blue space capsule that we've now seen outpictured for the first time in human history. And the young people of our country look at our interdependence with the other living systems of this earth, and they see a need for cooperation, not rivalry and depletion and extraction. And they look to the future and believe that the best tools that we can use and build are not bridges, or not walls, rather, but bridges. Bridges to new technologies, bridges to new sustainable ways of living, bridges to a new economy and a new framework for global trade. I mean, most Americans, young Americans especially, believe that a good trade deal for the United States of America is one that raises standards for workers and for the environment all around the world. Those are good trade deals for the United States. Bad trade deals are trade deals that create this rush to the bottom, to places where there are not protections for workers, not protections for the environment, or the atmosphere that we share with everyone else on this earth. So I do believe that while that new vision is emerging, the old fundamentalism is not going to go out with that kicking and screaming. We've seen the rise in our country almost every 40 years of whether it was the know-nothing parties or others, this sort of exclusive America for white Americans only sort of thing. We've seen this before. We've never seen it make its way all the way to the White House. We were usually able to protect our republic before this point. But look, all administrations are temporary. A president can only serve for a 4-year term and only be reelected for another 4-year term. I believe that our country's greatness lies not in our being perfect or infallible. It lies in our ability to correct mistakes and to make the future ours. And that's what we need to do again.
Thank you, thank you. Wise words, very wise words. Now, Martin, you've already elaborated on the bigger picture, worldview, etc., just now in your speech. So I'm going to kind of come back. I'm going to ask you, what do you see the role of political parties in this fight against populism? Where do you see yourself as an individual with your vast experience in Europe and also hopefully in your chancellorship